All right, start of turn 5. So we just finished up turn 4. Uh, Not much happened, and the main reason for that is because it was a rain turn, so a late rain turn. So that means that it doesn't start raining. The day isn't raining in itself. There's a chance that it's going to rain. So if at any point during the activation segment both sides roll ones, it becomes the effects of rain occur. So that means that movement is slower everywhere. Fords are no longer fordable. You can't cross rivers except at bridges, basically. So that made it kind of just bogged everybody down. It was kind of a good thing. That's the thing about games like I would imagine in the great battles of the Civil War and games that I have experience with, like Guns of Gettysburg. It's a go, 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 go. You never really stop to recover, I guess. So in this game, there was all the cav for the Confederacy was exhausted. Some of them were disorganized, so none of them really moved. So they took this turn, as well as the Union cavalry mostly, took the turn to just rest, to recover, to get organized, become unexhausted, that sort of thing. So it was a turn that pretty much everybody did that in. The big points of order here are that the wagon trains have crossed, of course, because this wagon train was exhausted. It took longer. They didn't want to move it as much. Plus, it took a extended march roll, which I should have taken one of the previous. I noticed in the last video I should have rolled, but I didn't. Basically, if you're exhausted or you get up to fatigue 3 or 4 on a march, you have to do a extended march where you roll, and if you roll poorly, there's modifiers. If you roll poorly, you could lose a man power, because you've outrun these units. They're lost. They become completely detached from the unit and are ineffective for combat. So that happened, and when that happens, it gives 2 victory points to the Confederacy. So they picked up 2 victory points for that, for this unit here. So this one's going to kind of tail behind the rest of the way. So earlier that attack was worth 2 victory points. So it's not a bad trade-off. But this one will kind of tail. The rest of them are going to keep going. I think the wagon trains are pretty safe at this point. The other big talking point is right up here at the top of your screen, where you probably didn't notice, is Lee has marched, and his corps was going to cross the fords here on the far western edge of the map. But rain meant that's going to stop, or meant that stopped for last turn. So they kind of just, rather than exhausting themselves to get across last turn, they're going to take it kind of in 2 steps. The other big thing you'll notice here is at turn 5, this is the last turn that the Confederates can have their reinforcements come in. Literally, they came in as late as possible. The rest of them are all on their way. So they will all arrive this turn. Right now, they're going to send Cheatham down Waynesboro Pike, and then they're going to send Stewart up this road here just to put pressure on Wilson. They'll probably send Stewart out first, try and get him around Wilson, because there's no roads up here. So once they start marching out, if they can get to here, then he's going to be in a bad way, and they may be able to take him out entirely. Now, Wilson really won't be able to react to this because I just set these up here so I don't have to set them up later. But if you were playing an opposed game, you wouldn't put these here. So until you get that stack out. So Wilson does not know that this is coming. So he's not going to know until it hits him. But that's the idea. Slide around the back. Wilson is then forced into a battle, which won't go his way. Or he'll just skirt off into the woods and then kind of have a hard time getting his way back into action. So this is not that big of a problem, honestly. So all of that's to come in. Lee's going to cross at the fords. There's still this kind of scramble out here amongst these units. So we'll see what happens with these cav divisions. Also, the thing to consider is you get victory points as the Confederates every turn you hold Columbia. So they've still got none for that. And the debate here I'm having is how long do we hold Columbia? Wood already tried to destroy the bridge here north of Columbia, failed to do so. So he's going to try that again because this bridge is not very useful. So kind of focus it all down here. But they've kind of debated, does someone want to stay behind, hold Columbia as long as possible and then jump across. The only problem is that if you jump across and don't blow the bridge, then you're going to get hounded all the way back to Nashville pretty much. So that's another discussion and something I'll let you know what I come of later on. The only other thing is these two cav units up here, you may have noticed. Let's see if we can get a good shot of them. Two of them, it's Howard and Hammond and Stewart. They are marching up this way to interdict Lee. So when Lee comes, and this is of course not Robert E. Lee, but just so in case anyone doesn't know, when Lee comes across here, these two Indiana units are not going to be able to hold them. I'm not even sure if they're going to contest. They may go up there to contest the ford. Depends how the die rolls come out. But otherwise, these cav units are going to be in charge of slowing them down near the Duck River Ridge. And the Natchez Trace is what this road is right there. So just keeping them busy because we don't want, right now, all of our military forces are centered here around Columbia. All of them. So we don't want these guys to come down here and the wagon trains to be way out here. And then we've got a wedge between the Army and the wagon trains, but more importantly, the Army and Nashville. So those units have a very important job. Once again, the beauty of this series is that you're planning those intricate bits of Army maneuvering, and it really is so much fun. One of the best series of games I've played, and I know this one's not even the top rated one. Not this one's bad, but like the other ones are legendary, like Stonewall Jackson's Way, Roads to Gettysburg, which of course has Here Come the Rebels and all that stuff. Like those are legendary. So I can only imagine how much fun those are, but this is just a blast. So turn 5, late rain is a possibility again this turn. The random events roll was a 7, which is late rain, sorry. So there could be rain again, which will drastically affect. Honestly, at this point, the Union want it to be immediately. They want as soon as possible. That's what I'm saying. Until you get across the Duck River, really, you want there to be no rain. And the Confederates want there to be rain. As soon as you get across the Duck River, the Union wants there to be rain. So they're hoping for Snake Eyes as soon as possible, because that's going to mean that if they get it early enough, Lee can't cross. But I promise you, first thing the Confederates are going to do is get them across. They're going to jump, because if they don't, there's another turn that this northern or this western flanking maneuver is not going to get to pay off. So really they wanted to be across last turn, but rain said no. We'll see whether it does this time or not. Okay, back here at a pretty critical moment. It's been almost entirely Confederate initiative rolls. They had to go into extended march, the fatigue level 3, but they got Lee across. Basically, they rolled 3 times, and they rolled a 1 each of them, activating Lee across everybody. So they moved 9 total, when obviously if they would rolled a 6, his modifier of 2 would have gotten him an 8 on a single roll. So they got to move 9 total, which is the minimum they could possibly move. So they lumbered across the Duck River. There was literally 3 times the Confederates have activated, twice to move Stuart up here, once to move a train. Since then, it's been just the Confederates moving in reinforcements, and that's what I want to zoom in on and show you. Hood did that maneuver I said earlier, where he came around here and flanked out Wilson, sent Wilson cav retreating up. The rest of Chetham's corps just came right on in, with Brown taking the southern path, and Bate and I forget who this is, but Chetham taking the main pike, the Columbia Pike. So now they've got another activation, and they are going to try and break this Union line. Now, it's a pretty well-structured line here for the most part, as far as there's a ZOC that covers all entry points along these roads. This is a little bit of a lapse here. This would break it, but basically you can't get through here. Cavalry can't sneak through for the most part. But the spacing in these lines does leave some vulnerabilities. So Hood and Chetham are going to march here into this hex, and then here into this hex, and then get a flank on Stanley. But the problem is, then he exposes himself to a flank of his own. If this doesn't go off, Stanley and Whitaker can flank Chetham themselves. So they were originally going to slide Hood into this position, Brown into this position, and then move Bates into St. John's Church, so that you have this Confederate line that stretches across these 4 hexes from the Green Lake Creek through St. John's Church, then to north of Little Bigby Creek. So there'd be these 4 hexes here. And then you could do, but that still may happen, but what they're going to do instead is hope that they can turn the left flank of this Union position and then focus purely on Stanley. So first of all, they're going to march in Brown. So I've already added fatigue markers, of which this is the 3rd. So I've done extended march rolls already 2. So don't worry about that. It's out of order, I know, but it doesn't affect anything. I guess it could, because like, oh, I know Hood's not going to, whatever. Just, I'm doing this so I don't have to show everything in the video and take up too much time. But Brown's going to move to here. So now he has 6 is the leader activation number. So they have 6 movement points to spend. So that's 1, 5 left. Now he's going to spend 4. He's going to attack on the march. He's going to spend 4 to have a prepared attack. So this is going to be just like as if he'd have done an assault. So prepared attack, 4 movement points, going to give him a +1 modifier. So let me get a die in here to mark all that up. It's going to be a +1. And then the numbers here, it's 2-2, so that's not a problem. Artillery 2-2. Now it will be a -1 on the artillery because they're enrolling. If you're wondering where I'm getting these numbers from, I'm not just making them up. They're all on this sheet. So the numbers here are 0. The artillery values are 0. On rolling, that's a -1 modifier. So both sides have got a 1. And the tactical modifiers also are 0, so that doesn't do anything. It's 8 against 6, which is not a ratio. It's 1-to-1, so that doesn't affect anything. And let me double check. It's not raining, so that doesn't affect anything. There are no flank bonuses here, so that doesn't affect anything, and there are no defender bonuses. So it's a straight up fight, which, you know, you don't always want to get into straight up fights, but, you know, it's sometimes you don't get to choose. But this is a very consequential attack. So it's a 6-5, be a -1. So the attack will fail. And it may be worse than that. So they're an 8. It's going to be a 1D. So they're going to lose a point, which is going to give victory points to the opponent. And then over here, they're just going to get a fatigue. Or, sorry, fatigue. A big F. 2 fatigue. So, first off, 1, we'll take this down to a 7. And then it's going to be put onto its disorganized side because of the D result. They're going to gain 3 fatigue levels, but of course they can only go to 4. So they are done. Whitaker is just going to gain 2 fatigue. It was a heated fight, but in the end, minimal losses, and his line holds. So now, and of course they don't advance because, you know, there was no result saying they did, and the attack failed. So now Hood has the decision. He has 7 men with Claiborne. So he could go into here with Stanley and get in a fight. Stanley has 11. They have 7. So it's not a modifier by any means, but he's still outnumbered. He could march down into this position, once again exposing a flank, but could possibly set up an assault next turn on either one of these positions. The thing is, he would have time to move Bate in. They wanted to turn this flank first, but what we're going to do is here with 6 points to work with, Claiborne, Cheatham, Hood here are going to go 3, 6. Let me double check that that's what those movement points even are. I think it is, but there's a terrain chart here. The movement point cost for rolling is 3. So that is correct. With 6 points, they can maneuver into that position. They're out of movement points. You cannot declare an attack with no movement points, even if it's a column of route. You still need movement points available to spend 0. You can't just, not have anything. And then Bait is going to move into St. John's Church. So this will seal up Hood's flanks at least. It seals up everybody's flanks. So they are pretty well protected. Now, what could happen is if they win the initiative roll again, they could assault either one. Now, that's why Hood's in this position, because Hood gives a +1 bonus during assaults. So he could hit Stanley or he could hit Whitaker, and it won't matter. Now, this is the better one, obviously, than Whitaker, because I don't think they get a flank bonus on this, because they're only covering 4 of the hexes. So I don't think they would get one here. But Stanley would, so they would probably hit Stanley, and then they could envelop that flank and force Whitaker out. Now, the Union desperately wants to win this initiative, because if they don't, then they're facing some serious repercussions. Now, they'll only get 1 chance at this, because these are both on 3. So I'll show you the roll. 6 and a 5, same thing. So Hood will be able to attempt this assault. Now, they can also do a grand assault here because they've got multiple units in adjacency to this. So Hood is going to assault. I'm going to go read up on the grand assault rules really quick, and I'm going to come back and bring you the final attack, what they're going to do. All right, I read up on the grand assault rules because I've never done one before. So basically, you start off with an assault first. So under Hood is Cheatham. I'm not going to move the counters, but under Hood is Cheatham. Cheatham says he's going to initiate an assault. You roll the die, which is down here, and you subtract that from their command number, which is the one on the right. If it's a 6, automatically fails. If you were trying to assault with multiple units in the same hex, you would then compare the number that you rolled subtracted by this. You need it to be greater than 0 or greater. So I'm not going to get into all that, but anyways, it succeeded. Then Cheatham can appeal for a grand assault. A grand assault can then include hexes adjacent. So if they wanted to attack here, he could appeal for a grand assault with including Brown. If they attack here, they can inquire about a grand assault including Bait. So they're going to attempt to attack the Union position at Pillow Place here, Stanley. And so now they have to appeal to an army leader. That will be Hood. So they're going to go to Hood and say, we would like to have a grand assault. So they roll this die. It's a 6. Automatically, they lose. They don't get the grand assault. I'm not sure if the whole thing gets canceled or not. I'll pause the video and go look if that's the case. But they really would like a 1, 2, 3, or 4. I don't know what happens if it's a 5, if it's even. I think that would be a failure. But they want a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So let me move this die. Try and get it up here without knocking over everything. So it's a 6. So that is a failure. So that means that Hood, Cheatham staff come running up, some aid come running up and asking for the go-ahead on this grand assault, and Hood looks at him rather uninspired and denies him that. So if is 6 or more, the grand assault does not take place. The grand assault ends, return to step 7 of the assault procedure. So the assault still continues, but the grand assault does not. So that's unfortunate. But it's not the end of the world, because Hood still has, or Cheatham still has, a pretty good opportunity to succeed in this, because he has a big flank going on here. So Hood has 7, Cheatham, Claiborne, and Stanley has 11 with Wagner. So no modifiers for the strength of the unit. So we'll go tactical modifier. Highest tactical modifier in here is Claiborne. Claiborne has a 4 for attack. I'm not going to take the stack off because there's too much going on here. The stack is, he has a 4 in there though. So 4 minus the highest here is 3. That's going to be a +1. So first of all, it's a +1 because it's an assault. It's another +1 because it's Hood in the assault. So Hood won't permiss the grand assault, but he will still participate in this. So 2, increased to a 3 because of the tactical modifier, and I actually am going to have to dig in here and take a look at the artillery. I think it's a 2. It is. So the artillery modifier is nothing. So now because there's no defensive bonuses for this particular location, we're now just on to the flank, which is not going to be a full, like a complete flank, because they here have ZOCs that cover all but one of the hexes. So inside of this insert is very handy. Let me zoom out. Very handy example. So we're looking at this one here. The 2 enemy units, now obviously there's more than 2, but 2 enemy units insert ZOC into 5 hexes adjacent if the enemy unit attacks attackers +2, since 5 of the 6 are covered. So 5 of the 6 here are covered because it's here, and just not the one to its rear. So this other unit obviously is not necessary for all of this, but so that will give them a +2. So that's going to be a +5 total. So that's a pretty dominant modifying number, +5. And it would have been even worse had they been able to ring along bait. So it's a +5 to this die roll. No modifiers for the Union whatsoever, because they don't really have anything going for them here, despite the fact they've got more troops. So this is the one part about leaving these troops, the Fourth Corps rather, leaving almost all of the Fourth Corps north of, or rather south of the Duck River, was now that they are going to get carved up. So 5 and a 3 is going to make this a little bit better. So that's a 2 in favor of the Union, minus the 5 of the die roll modifier. 5 plus 3 is 8. So it's going to be a +2 total. Or it should be a +3. 5 plus 3 is 8. Yeah, 3. Duh. So it's going to be a 3 plus 3, which is not as bad as it could have been, considering that it was a +5. So here they were a 7 on the +3. That's an FA, which is pretty good. And then +3 on the 11 is a 1D and a small r. So not amazing, but once again, if it would have been a 6-1 and then you add the +5, I mean, that same result would have been a 5 plus 5, that's a 10. That would have been a 5 DR. So you can see that it could have been much, much worse. So Stanley is going to lose 1 down to a 10. And then that 10 will be demoralized. And then he will have to withdraw, or rather not demoralized, it will be disorganized. That will give him 3 fatigue. And he'll then have a small r, which is retreat 2 to 4 hexes. So now the first hex he retreats through will have to be following a road outside of a ZOC. It'll have to be here. Then the other 2, but it's 2 to 4, can be anywhere that's not a ZOC, but he's just going to keep hauling ass. So he's 1, 2, 3, 4. He's going to go straight into the 4th. He could go here, but I don't really see the point. Just stack everybody in here pretty much. So he'll go back into there. Hood, on the other hand, got an F, a big F, and an A. So it's going to be 2 fatigue and then advance. Now, he was already at 4, so he can't take any more fatigue. But the assault on Pillow Place is a rather successful operation. And that's just an example of how using maneuver can, in a situation where you're actually outnumbered, give you a pretty good result. Now, granted, there was a lot of good leaders in there, and the die roll modifiers really swung that one, but still. Now, the Union are in a bad spot because they have not gotten any die rolls go their way as far as initiative rolls go. So they need them to turn quickly, get Whitaker back to Columbia. Waters, I'm less concerned about. He only has 2 strength points. He could make it this way across one of these fords over here. Not too big concern there, but they need to hold the rain off long enough to get them into Columbia. Then they can jump across, and they're hoping below the bridge, because while the presence of the Confederates was certainly not much of an issue just a few hours ago, now they are bearing down fully and really have Schofield a bit worried about the integrity of his defenses around Nashville. Okay, another consequential battle about to occur. Basically, Whitaker was here. Bate moved from St. John's Church around to try and, Jackson was over here, just to try and surround him. Jackson then came flying in. Once again, it's been activation after activation after activation. So now he's here. They've got him surrounded pretty well, but Bate can't move anymore. And Jackson obviously can't close up this entire gap. So Whitaker, on his activation, willingly takes a step over here. Now, risky move, but he's saying he knows that Bate can't attack, and Jackson's a cav unit with little to no strength. So, 1 strength point total. So he knows that this is a risk he's going to have to take here, because he doesn't want to attack here. And he basically, I'll explain to you why it's risky, because Jackson, the activations for the Confederates, Jackson's going to attack. And the reason he's going to do that, that's 1 to 6 odds. Why would you do that? Well, they've got full flank right now. And they know that if they don't take this advantage, that one of 2 things is going to happen. When the Union wins the initiative, they're going to either march Ruger out to the grist mill and get a full flank on Bate, or they're going to march Waters up to Bigbyville and get the flank that way. One or the other. And honestly, they may do both. So the hope here is that while the modifiers aren't awesome, they're not great, honestly. But if it works, everything sounds great if it works, then they can send Whitaker with 1 last hit back over to safety, because he'll retreat off this way. So that's the objective here, is to send him trailing off. So the modifiers are 1 to 6, which is a -5. So already starting off pretty deep in the hole. But flank means that they get a 4 positive. Tactical modifiers are even. Artillery modifiers are a +1 to the Union. It's a -1. It's a 6. Because it's rolling. So in the end, the total modifier is, and they're going to do a prepared attack. So 5 is a 1. I'm not sure if a cavalry leader can initiate this attack, or whether he has to do it on the march. It's not that big of a deal. No, I'm not even going to check it, because watch this right here. It's a 5. It's a +1. So they roll a 4, add 2 to it. Yeah, they're good. So even if they did this in the march, they still have whether they do assault or they do it off the march, they've got the attack to do it. So I'm not going to stop the video. So it's a +1 to the Union. So you can see where you don't want to do an attack where you're down, but this is the best it's going to be, and you don't want to give up a flank if you got it. So not bad. 5 and 3. It's going to be modified to a 4. And that'll be a +1. And remember, that's off of us 1 to 6 odds. So the attacker is on a 1. Let me just zoom out. The attacker's on a 1. And on a +1, that'll just be a D. And then the defender over here, also a D. So nothing really going here. But that will take this 1 strength point to disorganized. It'll take the fatigue level all the way up to 4 because they were already on 1. Actually, they should have been on 2 for the attack, but it doesn't matter. They're all the way up to 4. Whitaker was not, remember, his attack went well. He will become disorganized. His fatigue goes to 4, which means he cannot move. So someone's going to have to free him. It also means that these other 2 units can't move, though, so. Here and here. So that's pretty much locked in. Now, of course, they can retreat. But the biggest thing here is this hold. So it's still open for moves around the corners. This is a very a Go sense to me. If you've ever played the game Go, Chinese, it's not Chinese chess, but it's kind of a similar idea. It's chess is a Western game, Go is more of an Eastern game, where it's largely based around surrounding territory, but surrounding your opponent's stones as well. So this has that same sort of idea that reminds me of playing that, where you are trying to best set up those flank attacks. So now let's just roll and see. That's that done. It's a 6 and a 1 emphatically. So now the Union does get possible payback. So they're going to probably do both of these since they can't run away. Obviously, they can run away when they move in a unit. They can cav retreat, but they're going to probably jump out with both of these. And sitting on the south or the east side of the Little Bigby Creek, maybe can set up a better line of defense. They just have to be careful about abandoning Columbia, siphoning off too many forces, but they're going to jump out and hit somebody. So they've jumped right out with Ruger. Now, Ruger was the one that jumped out earlier and hit back like turn 2, I think. And I think Forrest or Cav was here, and they jumped out, hit him so that the wagon trains could move on. So he's kind of been heroic and sitting in Columbia waiting for orders, coming out to fight. So he's going to attack Bait here. He's going to have the backing of Whitaker behind him. It's a +4 for the flank, even on tactical, even on ratio, even on defensive bonus. There's nothing for the defensive bonus, but it's a -1 because he didn't have enough to get a prepared attack on the march. So it's going to be a +3 total for the Union, who are the attackers here, which is pretty good. 5-4. It's going to be a +4 in the end. That's very good. So let's zoom back out. So they're both 6 and 5, so they're going to be in this table. So on a +4, that's going to be a small F, a small fatigue, and an A, which suits them just fine. And then a 1 DR. It's exactly what they wanted. So a small fatigue is just 1. They only had 1 to start with. So that'll take them like that. Bait, though, he's going to get off worse for wear here. So he's going to go from 5 to 4. The 4 will be disorganized. And then he's going to get, he's already at max fatigue, so he can't gain anymore. But then he's going to have to retreat. He's also going to be demoralized because it's a big R. So demoralized is also bad. So then he's going to have to retreat. Let's see here. D, and then the big R, 4 to 6 hexes. So the first priority is retreat follows road, pike, or railroad into an active enemy, yada yada. Basically, they want to go further away, not in a ZOC. They cannot get out of a ZOC here. It's impossible. So we've got to go down to the one that says it is into a ZOC, but not enemy occupied, and it's more distant. So they want it to be enemy occupied and more distant. That is possible. They can go here. If they went here, there's two options here. It's these two spaces. If they went here, they would lose a strength. So they're going to go here instead. And they honestly may still, no, they don't lose one because they moved. So then the second, third, and fourth, so they did not exit the enemy ZOC. So the second, third, or fourth normal retreat, assuming the unit is not exiting. So they are exiting for each of the first 4 hinted. If in retreat route, exit. So yeah, they're still exiting. So now they want to follow another road, once again further away. That does not exist. So now they're going to come here, because this is further away. It does not follow a road. And then from here on out, that's 2 of the hexes. They got 2 more at least. They can do more than that. The rest of them are just retreat, not into an enemy ZOC. So then they got to go 2 more. So they can go 1, 2, or 1, 2 to here. They can even go further away. I think here is probably fine. That way they're still, they actually might go to here. They can jump across maybe, next turn or something, or kind of just chill where they are. But they're on the pike at least, so they can, if it rains, they've got some pretty good movement. So, and then Ruger advances. I want to see if advance is mandatory, because if it is, may advance after combat. It's tough because Hood could next turn. Yeah, I don't think it's that important. I think Ruger's going to stay there. So yeah, Ruger will stay. So in the end, that's going to give a victory point to the Confederates. Now, both sides have lost 2 points to manpower. So that's 6 victory points for the Union in the end. They get 3 for each. The Confederates get 2. So 6 total points to the Union, 4 total points to the Confederates, and +2 obviously to the Union in their favor. They were already 2 in the hole of the Confederates because of the manpower lost to the wagon train. So victory points are absolutely even at the moment. But you could see how that attack was risky. If it had paid off better and Whitaker had taken the retreat, then that flank would not have even been open, and none of this would have happened. But as of right now, Bate has been pretty well shattered, and Chetham's corps is not in a great spot. I mean, they're okay, but they're not in an amazing spot. Honestly, they're probably a little bit worse for wear because Brown took a bit of a beating. Bate is shattered, and the only person that's had any success was Claiborne, which is to be expected. But the thing about Claiborne is every time you get in an attack with him, if the rolls are ever the same, he dies and is replaced by someone else. So it's kind of risky to throw him into every single battle. So anyways, we'll march on here. Right now, the Confederates are pretty much used up on most of their stuff. They've still got some cav laying around that hasn't used up all of their fatigue, but there's plenty of Union units still to move because the Confederates, like I said, just did so much. Now, the one thing we, of course, haven't done yet is the rest of these units are still to come on. So Stuart's Corps are going to enter in. They won't really be able to have an impact unless they force march. I really don't think they can have an impact this turn, but if they can, they could always slam into Ruger. But regardless, I don't think the position is going to be tenable long term for the Union in Columbia, because Whitaker's not in fighting shape right now. Waters is too weak. He only has 2 strength points. Ruger's on 6. Stanley and Wagner are on 10 now, I think, but they're disorganized, so they're at like 7. So anyways, these forces need to get across, blow the bridge, take a turn to recover, and then start getting back up to Franklin and Nashville, because those cavalry units can't hold off Lee forever. So it's just funny, because at the beginning of this turn, the end of last turn, I was thinking to myself, well, we can hold here in Columbia for a while. You know, we stick a unit in the fort, maybe one in this redoubt here, blow this bridge, leave this one open for our retreat, and we can probably hold the Confederates for a solid turn or so. Keep them out for a day, but the Confederates to the north are going to turn the flank, and we need everybody's hands on deck, because right now all the Union infantry forces are in your shot. And obviously this is a very small portion of the map. So we'll see if there's anything else this turn, but I imagine that's probably most of the major action. Big fighting around Pillow Place, big fighting on the south shores of the Little Digby Creek. All in all, Confederates and Union, I would say, come off just about even. So before I start, I want to say that I missed a modifier up here. I went back and watched some of the footage from this episode, and I missed the artillery modifier up here. It should have been an additional +1 for the Union, which wouldn't have affected the outcome as far as the loser goes, but it would have made Hood lose an extra strength point and make him disorganized. So it didn't really affect much, but it does give, obviously, the victory points for lost strength points by the Confederacy, and he is now disorganized. So it does have an effect on future turns, but as far as that immediate moment, it did not. So it's rain started coming down since we were last here. The biggest thing was Hatch tried to move around to get a flank on Beaufort, when actually it wouldn't have even mattered, because these woods have got him in a pretty good spot. So he's unintentionally wound up in a bad spot himself, because Crossland has marched around and Beaufort's going to hit him with an attack. He has 10 movement points, 8 of which he's going to spend to get a prepared attack. So that's going to be a +1. The modifier for rain is a -1 for attacking in the rain. So they're even. Tactical modifiers, even as well. Let me look at artillery. It's a 1 and a 1. So that will be a rolling. It'll be -1. I don't know if rain has an effect on that. I don't think it does. So that'll be 2 here. The strength is 2 versus 3, so there's no effect there. But the big one, though, is the flank, which is a +4, because they've got it completely surrounded. So that'll be 5. And in the end, it's going to be a total 3 in favor of the Confederacy. And this is important, because if you can wipe out or pretty well stunt this cavalry unit, then you've got the cavalry advantage in this area of the map, because Wilson's kind of got a match up in the north with Forrest. So this is kind of like the head-to-head battle of Cav in this area. So +3 total to the Confederacy. Just out of your view, it is an awful 6-1. So +3 is going to give them a 4 total. So it's going to be a +2 to the Union instead. So a horrendous debacle. Buford absolutely butchered this one. So that's going to be a +2 to the defenders, or -2, excuse me. It's a -2, but it goes to the defenders. So they are on a 1 to 3, so a 2 is D. And the same over here, it is a small f, which is just 1. So Buford is going to increase his fatigue by 3 levels, become disorganized. He is done for the day. Like I said, he's safe in this position because he can't get the flank, but I mean, he can still be attacked by all means. And right now he's got 1 point, so for the defender, it's just a small f, which will give them to 2. So that would be 3 to 1 odds in this attack here, which is still decent. So Buford will, Hatch will think about it. But all in all, pretty failed attack. There's not much left to do on this turn because it is raining. Everybody's pretty exhausted after a long day's combat. Forrest, unfortunately, will not be able to get across the Duck River, but next turn he's going to jump across and smash into Stewart and kind of clear the way along the Natchez Trace for Lee to pretty much march unhindered, untrammeled. And then the remainder of these Confederate forces still have to come in. Wilson's made it back on the road. He has 2 fatigue. He'll have to decide if he wants to move anymore or not. But a small failed assault here. So end of turn 5, not much more happened really. Everybody kind of slid along as they could. The only real major points were up here, the 2 Indiana regiments, I think, that are occupying these forts. They're abandoning them. They thought about contesting the crossing here of Forrest, but Clayton can just come in and smash them. Forrest can just smash them. So I didn't really see how much benefit it would provide. So instead, those 2 Indiana regiments are going to try and make their way through Santa Fe and then on to the Duck River Ridge along the Natchez Trace. Maybe they can hold up better than the cavalry will, just retreating. Outside of that, infantry along, everything pretty standard. I'm going to package this one up as episode 5, the Battle of Pillow Place, because we saw quite a big confrontation over here and the surrounding area along Little Bigby Creek. So episode 5, or turn 5, excuse me, very eventful. That is November 27th. So now on to November 28th.